Right, welcome back to another episode of My Next Guest Bartender, Series 2. This is the fourth and final one of this year, and this one is all about how to create your own brand, and whether that's personal or whether that's to do with the bar. This is what we're going to discuss. So on my beautiful, bright, shiny sofa, I've got Alex Chapman and Alex Irvin of LXPR. I've got Emma Stokes, aka Gin Monkey. And I've got Sarah Mackay of Scran and Jam Consultancy. Welcome, guys. How you doing? I'm not at all intimidated by you all. I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm 3/4 of the way down my Negroni, and I'm about to order my next one. So, right, today is all about how to create a brand and what a brand is and how you develop that brand. First thing I want to ask is, how do we, once we've got a concept, how do we turn that into a brand, and what is the difference? So who wants to start off with that? I love the fact that everyone turned to the right then. So maybe we'll just go with Sarah. How do you feel about that?
I think we were chatting earlier. I think what a concept is an idea, whereas a brand is much more than that. It's more emotive. It's all touch points. It's everything that brings it to kind of a full circle of its identity, rather than just an idea.
Like brings it to life. So if you think about like the brand is almost like the personality. So if it like it's how you bring the idea to life.
It's a little bit of the tone of voice that you use
everything.
as well.
So it's from like it's the tone of voice, like written tone of voice, so how you communicate and how you speak, like whether you're formal, whether you're fun, friendly, use emojis, whatever it might be, through to like
your logo, your font.
Yeah, your logos, your font, your coasters, your music, your pictures that you use on social media. Everything can kind of like pull to life and bring and communicate how you're branded.
So when you're developing this brand, you've got your idea, your concept. Is it literally just a big massive whiteboard of all different ideas of what this brand is becoming, or is there a certain place that you start? How do we begin? What's the beginning, middle, and end?
I think you should always think about your audience. So who are you trying to talk to and what are you trying to do? What's going to inspire them to follow you and to engage with your brand, whatever it might be. And always start with them and what they want and go from there.
And I think if you think about thinking about how you want them to feel when they engage with you. And so like, do you want them to feel sophisticated or fun or relaxed or wild or whatever it might be? Like you kind of, that's like, think about how you want them to feel, and then that will also kind of bring the more emotive elements to it as well as the practical.
Yeah. And also the need. I think that's we were talking earlier about, you might have the most amazing idea in the world, but if nobody wants it, you've got a brand. So I think it's you've got to have like a certain commercial mindset as well in terms of, this is a great idea, is there a market for it? So
the brand is as much about the business as it is about personality? I mean, is there one that trumps the other?
I think to have a successful brand, I think you do, as much as creatives hate to think about the commercials, and I be more creative than I am commercial, don't tell my clients.
Sorry, we'll edit that out as well.
I think you've got to weigh up the fact that like I say, it needs to be as commercial as it is creative, and they come together to create something successful.
How important is the word purpose behind a brand?
Really important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm just trying to pick. If you think about gin, it's perfect, right? Because there's so many gins out there. What makes the good ones stand out from the bad ones? Well, the ones that are growing. Half the time, yes, it's money, but it's that kind of combination of knowing what your brand is, knowing what your purpose is, knowing who your audience is, and then having the kind of commercial side of your brain going, well, if I do this and do this, then I get to where I want to be.
And just sticking with gin, are there any particular trends that you can see just, developing, and you can see where they'll be in a couple of years' time?
I just hope the flavoured one's over. Really fed up with that. The back teeth. But hopefully that's reached a peak. I mean, flavoured gins can stay, just stop growing.
But in terms of purpose, you think about, sustainability is a big marketing buzzword. Are there any other trends, like purpose trends, that you can see?
No, I think sustainability is one that you see most through people. Bottles became really big and important at some point, but then actually consumers got a bit fed up because they were buying a beautiful bottle with a average gin in there. So you don't have repeat kind of custom through that. So people were like, oh, well, if I change my bottle, make it really beautiful, then I'll sell loads of gin. Well, you do initially, but then you don't get the repeat custom because you haven't got the substance to back it up.
Are we talking about a particular gin from the southwest?
Maybe.
the very, very deepest
couldn't possibly
dark
say.
parts of southwest England. There's just on that note as well. I've noticed a big shift in Maker's Mark in terms of the way that they're presenting their purpose because of I mean, the brand ambassadors, I'm sure, play a huge role in that. But what they are trying to do in terms of their sustainability and brand message isn't just about the liquid inside it. It's about the whole ecosystem pretty much surrounding that part of Kentucky. And I think that's something that once you kind of fall in love with a brand, it sticks with you and you're very happy to keep pushing it. Are there any other brands that you've seen?
Bombay did something last year where they did the lemon, whatever they call it, the lemon version. But when they did the gifting packaging of it all, everything was completely 100% recycled. It was all made from like various husks of lemons and things. And I was actually, for the first time,
It's quite impressive that
that
every single element of
from
what
even
you've
the
received.
labeling on the bottle, everything about it was all completely sustainable, which did stick in my head.
I think a big thing that, and it has been heavily it's come more to the fore, I think, post-COVID, but consumer trends and what people kind of buy into now is like having a human element to a brand. So whether that's from a business to like a trade perspective or whether it's to a consumer, but I think if there's like this a human element, so whether that's sustainability, like humans, like sort of people's sustainability, like looking after and like staff welfare or whatever it might be, through to environmental elements, or if it's just kind of like a localized approach and like working with their local communities, but that's definitely kind of consumers and people kind of buying into that more, or without even probably realizing, but that's a kind of a consumer trend that is therefore influencing.
And I think it's whether that's a brand like a spirits brand or a bar, I think actually that is becoming something that people are focusing on as well. It's kind of the way that the people within an ecosystem are treated as well.
And I think
storytelling as well. Like I had the fortunate to work with the team at the Fat Duck recently, and the storytelling element, I think, of any kind of restaurant, bar, brand, product, I think the consumer just wants much more now. I think rather than just say this is a great liquid or this is just a great product, I think now, in order to get a brand up there with some of the best, you really need to kind of give them more, give them something
and like
to buy into or believe in.
They want to know who you are as well, right? They want to connect with you as individuals, whether it's the bartenders behind the bar or your brand ambassador and things like that. They want to have that human connection. They want to feel like they know you as a brand.
That's why you go to your favourite restaurant or your favourite bar, because you kind of want to be recognised, or you want to see the person behind the bar.
Well, people buy from people. I mean, that's one of the most famous sayings going. So there are certain brands out there that I think they put so much money behind almost the message of look how cool we are, look at this great colour, look at this pimped out car with all the speakers, when actually it's just got no real soul behind it.
Yeah. Which is the personality, which then comes back to the brand. Like we've worked on brands in like the past where there's we'll be like, they're like, we've done this and look how pretty the bottle is and the liquid's really nice, and we're like, cool, like, but what makes you different to someone else in the market? And like, why? Like, why are you here? Like,
why do you want to know that?
Like, why are we here? And like, they can't give you that bit, and it's almost like, and so I think there has to be like a level of like, level of authenticity to like what you're doing. But I think having a clear brand purpose is whatever that might be is kind of is
really a great
important.
word, authenticity. I think I've been working on a brand recently, Scottish brand, shock horror, and I'm literally the only Scottish person working on the brand, which means that I'm a shoo-in for keeping that client for a long time, because you need the authenticity. People really want that now, and they really stand behind it. They can buy into it. The romanticism of it as well, I think, as well. When you've got kind of something authentic, there's something people can believe.
I mean, people love a good story. Like,
Exactly.
People just fall in love with stories. It's brilliant. Like the whole, any kind of Cinderella story where like it's almost rags to riches or whatever it might be. It's brilliant. Speaking of people, we talk about personal brands as well. This is pretty much directed solely at you. You still bartend.
Yes.
You are one of the most well-known, I suppose, brand personalities. and yet you still have your kind of regular
Day job.
boring day job.
You say boring.
What's the day
Hold on,
job?
which is head of communications at, and I stopped writing after that.
Yeah. So it's the National Centre for the 3 Rs, so reduction, refinement and replacement of the use of animals in research. So we use lots of animals in research. It's not ethical. Also, it's shit science, and technology has never, evolved at such a speed. So we should be, making the most of those technologies and new knowledge to move away from using animals, use more human relevant models and all of that. And if I did a terrible job at explaining that, then I'm really bad at my job because I'm comms, so I'm meant to tell the world about this. So good job.
And it was basically your love of gin that basically meant you started Gin Monkey. Must have been close to 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was just a Twitter blog?
It was Twitter, website. I mean, I set it up to chronicle London's cocktail bars. So at the time, Time Out and all the other websites didn't have a category for cocktails. So they'd be like, this is the best bar in London this week. And I was like, at the bottom, it'd be like, and they do a few cocktails. And you go in, and the cocktails would sometimes be amazing, sometimes they'd be shit. But it was a really good party bar. Also, you could pay to be the best bar in London, which was really annoying. So I'm like, no, I'm not having any of this. So I started going around London bars. But yeah, I call myself Gin Monkey because I love gin, and I've got long, flavy.
Is that what it was?
Clumsy arms, yeah. I'm really, really clumsy.
Cheeky.
Oh no, I just run into a room and knock things off. So my dad used to call me, little monkey.
Monkey.
Yeah, it just caused chaos.
So I remember when it first started, and we probably had a drink maybe 10 or 12 years ago, there was numerous spirit and animal Twitter feeds.
Yes.
Like I remember I think was it the Amaretto armadillo?
She didn't get the brief. I was like, you need to pick a primate and a spirit. So we had the.
That's quite niche.
Yeah.
It's a really niche.
Yeah. So
there was loads
we
of
had
them.
the cachaça chimp. And there was some sort of marmoset or something like that. And then my friend was like, well, I'm the Amaretto armadillo. I was like, that makes no sense. An armadillo is not a primate. And then she sent me that video of the armadillo just like, She's like, yes, that's adorable. Yes, fine, you can be the Amaretto armadillo. But yeah, it was just my friends that did my masters with me.
Oh, really?
And they used to help me review all the bars because we did everything anonymously.
So from that point, did you realise what you had? I mean, it was just a bit of fun to begin with, right?
Yeah, and I guess at this point, the gin industry with 10, 12 gins in the world, really, that anyone knew about, maybe 5 that anyone drank. And then there were other websites came about, Cocktail Lovers, Bar Chick, Design My Night, and they all started kind of doing what I was doing, but on a much bigger scale with money and budget and things.
Teams.
Yeah, whole teams.
Cool.
I used to get messages being like, could one of your team come review the bar? I was like, I've misplaced my team again. But yeah, so I just started getting invited to gin events as well with new gins and launches, and I've always loved gin, so I was like, let's go over that way and leave all the bar reviewing to everybody else.
And then took over World Gin Day.
And then took over World Gin Day, yeah. So Neil set it up in his garden, was very good at websites, so just registered a website and was like, I declare it World Gin Day. That was literally the first World Gin Day. I think the second one we went to Graphic in Soho, and Paul Haletko from Few just happened to be in town, and Mike Vacco and a few others. We all just had a drink, toasted World Gin Day, and then it's gone a bit nuts. So,
I mean, I think World Gin Day is celebrated in like 40 odd countries.
All around the world, yeah. And I think the hashtag gets stupid million.
Yeah, like 160 odd million people.
Yeah. So, and I guess it was one of the first days of anything. So I'm sorry, because now it was
So now we can blame you for like, World Chartreuse Day or something like that.
I mean, I don't mind that.
I mean,
So long as they send you a bottle of chartreuse.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Moving on, I mean, like personality-wise, I think like creating that brand is really important. What, and this might be a bit of a touchy subject, what can or should be expected of younger bartenders in terms of their own presence, social media, personality, when it comes to brand association? And maybe I'll put that to PR first, just for the politically correct.
Yeah, I'm in.
We were discussing this earlier, weren't we? And I do think it is a complex issue, and there's probably not one right answer. I think, obviously, if you are kind of at the start of your bartending career, and you want to build your profile, then working with the bar you work at, you know, with social media can be a really good way to leverage that. In terms of kind of a bar expecting people to be posting for them, I don't know.
I think it's quite a tricky one to expect. I think for anyone to expect you to post something on their personal social media feed, and therefore I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think if you're cultivating a strong work team, your team should feel like your team would hopefully feel engaged enough that they would want to do it. But I don't think you can ask people to do it.
Like if they feel like they're working for a brand that they're
Believe in.
engaged with and believe in,
then they would hopefully want to do that. But I don't know if you should. I don't think you should expect someone, or could ask someone to do that for you.
I think before I had Span and Dram, I had my consultancy was just my name, and then everybody expected, you know, what's your social media handle? Can you post? Are you going to post it with this client or this that? And I'm completely staunch against it. I just don't believe that. I don't mix them at all, and I still don't.
I've requested to follow you about a month ago now, and I've still not had that that tick. So I've been ghosted already.
It's in the inner circle.
Yeah, I'm still not there yet.
How many more martinis before?
And I don't often do a cull too, so it's like you might get in.
What I would say though is if you're a young bartender and you're using social media to engage with the industry, you've got to be really careful that you stick to that as well and post responsibly, because further down your career, if you then want to work for a brand who do want you to use your social media as part of your job, then you don't want to have, well, I always say, like, if I don't want my mum to see it, don't put it on social media. It's always a good, like,
I think that's
bar.
right.
Private, don't accept people.
We all want to know what's on your social media.
I want to know.
There's definitely nobody in this room that follows me. Safe for now.
We spoke already just a little bit about how it's important for, well, I suppose younger, in fact, let's start again. Like, it's important for younger bartenders to get on board with the place that they're working at. How about people who are a little bit more seasoned, who have like a few more contacts, maybe started thinking about either brand ambassador role or consultancy role? What would be expected of them from maybe just a simple social media point of view?
I mean, you're quite unique, because I would say most people, if they're working with you, they want your social media. They want that kind of reach that you provide.
They want access.
Yeah.
It's just the reason why I don't do it, because I'm fiercely protective of my contacts for the reason, because it's my living. But I also respect them for that too. So, you know, I work with different industries, not just hospitality, but luxury products or whatever. So I think the expectation of it, I've always been really clear and direct up front. And I think if you are clear and direct up front and say, you know, this is not something I'm offering, this is a no-go, then they do tend to.
Is that something that you start the conversation with, or is part of your T's and C's?
Yeah.
Or does it come up eventually anyway?
It's part of my T's and C's in terms of, like I say, I do offer social media support to them and their channels, and I will link them and, you know, advise, but they don't get to use mine.
And I think because ultimately, if you are, whatever you're being asked to do on your social media, you're providing endorsement, which is a form of advertising. You know, you're endorsing something personally. So whether that's a brand or a venue or whatever it might be, that's essentially lending your endorsement. Now, I hope, like, you would imagine that if you're working somewhere, then you probably would want to be doing that anyway. But I don't think it should ever be expected of you. And I think, likewise, if it is, that's where that can be negotiated within fees and salaries, because you're essentially.
Well, you have to be passionate about what you're doing, whether, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
Presumably you're passionate about.
You can't keep going if you're not. Like, it can be exhausting sometimes.
You can have multiple channels, though. I think I'm a little bit old school. So when I started on Instagram and things, it was very much about just posting stuff about your life. You know, wasn't at all business related. And I do have a business Instagram. I just get so bored of doing it because you do everybody else's all day.
Exactly.
That you're like, oh, I don't want to post anything on mine.
You're not delegated that bit yet as well?
Not yet. It's
No?
next on the list.
Right, okay.
I guess the thing you need to be careful as well in terms of endorsement is if you are endorsing something, if it doesn't fit in with your brand and your messaging and everything like that, then don't be afraid to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. It can be really tempting to say yes to absolutely
I also
everything.
look at other people's social media and think, sell out. Like,
Well, that was going to be my next.
judgy.
Like, do people see through that straight away?
Yeah,
Do you think?
I think so. Like when paid adverts came in and things, I personally, not that I'm totally judgy. I'm a little bit judgy.
Oh, please.
But I was like, oh God, that's not. And then you kind of get a little bit disappointed and disheartened because then you think, well, actually, do they believe in that, or are they just taking a check?
Well, I think because there's a legal responsibility, isn't there, now to make sure that you're putting out, even if you've just been given a bottle, you should technically. And very few people do. Yeah, but I guess the thing is, you can still do that, and you can still conform to the rules if you believe in the product. If you don't believe in it, then don't say yes.
You start questioning whether people believe in the products. That's my bit. That's why, and I don't use it as part of my strategy. I don't ever do paid advertising for any of my clients because of that reason.
We're more probably, like, because we do that for a living, like, we're savvy to it, and I do think that sadly, like, a lot of people don't or might not question or realise it, and then that's the problem is, and that's so many people, and that's where they're leveraging is they're getting more wider consumer.
It's integrity as well. I think, like, if you work with a particular brand or a person and they're endorsing a product, as long as they're endorsing that product and it's continuous and consistent over 6 months, a year or longer, then you're like, oh, actually they've bought into that product. Whereas if you see them doing 10 different ones in a month, you're like, me. Like,
or mix it up as well, have ads and then have just normal content, and don't just have everything paid.
And I think there's an understanding, you know, like, there is a business element and people do need to make a living, but I think...
And we have had a pretty shit couple of years.
But I think that's where also it comes back to brand purpose, because your brand purpose also helps you define what you're not as much as what you are, and that can help you make those decisions about which partnerships might be right for you and which might not be. So
being advised properly as well, I think, is really key.
Yeah, and I think that also comes back to them being authentic and authenticity, which is important as well. So
because people can see through it, right?
Yeah.
Should we talk about influencers?
Yeah.
How would you define an influencer in hospitality, do you think?
Start with this one, only because I said that. So again, going back to the old school influencers. So for me, I look back to my original days when I first started in London and I worked for Jonathan Downey, and he, for me, was the ultimate influencer at the time. He had the best bar group, he had the best kind of bar academy, he did everything really exceptionally well, and everybody looked to him in terms of what cocktail direction was going, and really respected. But there was no social media. There was, there was press, yes, but there was, nowadays I feel like influencers are determined by how many followers you've got, rather than your actual influence on other people within your industry.
It literally is, and it's such an obvious thing to say, like, an influencer is someone who has influence. And whether that is through the fact that they have influence because if they post something on social media, people go out and buy it, or whether it's because they start making something in their bar, trickle down effect as people start copying that style, but that might not be because they've seen it on social, it's because they're developing trends. Like, so I think it's someone that influences behaviour.
It can be small or large. Like I have a thing called Sailor's List. It's just basically my list of bars and restaurants I desperately want to go to. It just keeps growing. Every now and again, one of my mates will text me and be like, right, what's at the top of Sailor's List this week? And I'll be like, oh, go here, here, and here. Yeah,
which influences someone's behaviour.
I'm not an influencer with followers, but I'm influencing somebody to go to a nice restaurant. It's it's subjective. So
without take the number of followers out of it, who do you think are some of the biggest influential people in our industry at the moment?
Who do I look to? I think Anna Sebastian's doing a really good job. I think she's been really brave in some of she posts a lot. She's not too thought through, it's not too conceited, and it's definitely not overstyled, which I really like. It feels real. I think
authentic.
Very authentic. I like what she's doing personally.
Like Becky Paskin as well, and everything that she's doing to kind of further, inclusion in whiskey across the board is really important in those kind of conversations. And I think that kind of influence is really important as well. It's not sometimes how far your influence goes, but it's what you're trying to do with it.
I think Anna would celebrate her as well. I think that's the other there's a few people involved in Celebrate Her, but I think that one in particular is an incredible platform and it's growing exponentially at the minute.
I think from our side as well, from the actual bar business side of it, Monica and Alex.
I don't think you could not say Monica and Alex.
Some of the stuff that they're doing, even just like the way that they built a bar, it's just completely groundbreaking. I think Emily's here. Like, she was telling me the other day that the amount of time that it takes to just break down that bar, compared to just over there. It's just it's incredible.
Everything I think for us, I do find what they do. They whenever we work with them for so long now, like they'll say things, and I'm like, literally never heard anyone say that yet, and I know that in about a year's time other people will be saying it too. So like they just always are, and it's because they're just always, and they're not aware. And you know how we were talking earlier, like, do you know if you're an influencer or not? But I don't think they're not intentional influencers. They just are always just looking to be
Ahead
how
of the
can
curve.
they not, and they're not intentionally looking to be ahead of the curve. They're just looking how can we make this better? How can we do? They don't just go, oh well, we do this because this is what has been done for years. It's like with the bar station, it's like, how can we make the bar station better? Like, so that's why they did it. So it's like they just always look at how can we make the guest experience better? How can we do this? And it's just always questioning what you do.
And
So
there's like an intention
to
behind
make
it
that better, and the intention
A
is to
purpose.
make it purpose.
Oh, it's come full circle now as well.
Oh, look at what
Wow.
we did there.
Wow, maybe we should wrap that up straight away. That's it.
And
How, just like we touched on it a little bit already, how important to the brand is your contacts, your little black book of people?
It's fundamental, I think. Well,
Yeah.
particularly for me, going from working for people to working for myself, I've only been able to do that by building up my contacts and my network. So that it gave me the opportunity to then be able to go out on my own and do my own thing because of my, I hate the word little black book, but because I do have connections and contacts, I'm able to do that. Whereas before, when I first started out, I didn't know anyone or anything, so there's just absolutely no chance.
I think that you have to make sure that those contacts that you actually nurture like genuine relationships though, and it is a two-way street. So I think it's all well and good having a list of people that you can maybe message, but you need to make sure that you actually put the time into.
Yeah, that you've looked after them as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of this industry, though. I think when I look at now my friend network, it's all people that I've met, whether it's brand ambassadors or reps or whatever it may be. They're all now my genuine best friends, and I think that's something that's really
Birds
lovely
of a
about
feather
this
flock together.
company. There we go. We're all raging alcoholics now.
Edit that, please, James. Can people in the bar, can the bartenders leverage the contacts that they've got when it comes to negotiating a new pay deal or a contract or a starting salary or anything like that?
Yeah, 100%.
I think anything that demonstrates value to a business, no matter what the business is, if it's a bar or a brand, then is a way that you can then start those conversations, right? So if you can prove that through your contacts or through your network or through your social media, you're engaging with people that will bring value to that business, then that's always a positive thing, right?
Mm-hmm. And speaking of value, what's the best way to promote a brand? Is paid ads on social media the most common way, the easiest way? Is there any tricks of the trade that you guys want to share?
I think it just depends on what your objective is. So if it's bottle sales, for example, if you're a brand and you wanted to sell things, and sometimes like paid for ads because there's a direct click through. If it's brand, it might be brand partnerships, it might be PR. I mean, in an ideal world, it's everything all together, because I think holistically, when you put everything together, it's the strongest. It's the strongest offering, and it's all the touch points that people will come into contact with you that kind of make the sort of get that point across. But I think it depends on what your objective
And
is.
I think as well, like obviously PR and marketing agencies and things like that, they are a privilege. Not everybody can afford when they start out. But I think the most important thing is that when you do start with a brand, that you are consistent with it. And I think it's that consistency of how you show up, how people feel when they engage with you, that ultimately, like, you could have all of those elements, but if you come back to the brand and it's not strong and you're not being consistent with it, those things won't save you alone, kind of thing. So
Is consistency the most important part of brand development?
I would say so.
100%.
Yeah.
I think
From
it's sitting down at the start and being like, what's my brand? Who are my audience? What do I want to do? How do I want to engage with them? And then being consistent with that. It's not just being consistent just for consistency's sake. Thinking about what you're trying to do and who you're trying to reach and how you're going to reach.
Not overcomplicating it either.
Yeah.
Like we had this discussion about you should be able to explain your brand.
Quickly.
David Carter Manteca, he said it perfectly. You should be able to explain your brand to a child and understand it.
Yeah.
These people are going to go on and on and on about like this complex addition of this, and you're just like, oh.
I think there's that saying that you should be able to explain your brand to a 6-year-old, and they should be able to explain it to another 6-year-old. And it should be as simple as
It
that.
should be like literally generally normally the rule of thumb is like 3
And you'd be
things that you describe it as.
surprised. Yeah, and you'd be surprised how that frequently doesn't happen.
Like these like long blurbs.
Oh.
My brand is this, and then you're just like, no.
no, like, it's just this.
And I think as well, it's not what you want your brand to be. It's what the brand should be, given what you're trying to do, who you're trying to reach, the audience, and the people you're trying to get that brand to, whether it's a bar or a booze brand or whatever. Look at that, and yeah, you might want to go down a certain route, but if your audience isn't there, what's the point?
You have to be passionate about it, and it doesn't need to be personal, but you also need to remove your ego and what you like more than what the customer wants. And people fall down into the traps all the time. I've seen it 100 times where someone's like doing a tasting, a menu tasting, being like, I don't like that. Well, you might not like that, but I'm pretty sure
they will.
The vegans are not going to like that. So it's just, I think people just sometimes overlook the fact that it's their brand and they're so passionate about it. They forget what they're actually in it for.
A little bit too much tunnel vision. Sorry?
They need to understand it.
Yeah.
Like if it's so complicated, they're like, don't like. Cool, I'll just get.
Just
I'm
move
just
on to
gonna
the
get a
next
gin
one.
and tonic.
Just
Like
choice.
it alienates people. So I think just the ease of simplicity.
Can your own personal brand, I suppose, this probably to you, can your own personal brand become a side hustle and an individual thing within itself?
Yeah, I think it can. I think if
The time.
Yeah, if you've got the time. Oh my word! If you like sleep, no. But no, I think as well it's about taking the time as well. If it's going to become a side hustle, don't try and run before you can walk. Make sure you've got your little black book. Make sure you've got your network. Make sure you understand what it is that you have that you can give to people. So I do a lot of writing on gin because I feel like I've got the insight to be able to do that. I probably wouldn't write anything on rum because I don't have any insight in the rum category. But if you can start building it up. I think, it takes time, but it absolutely can.
Should there be a 5-year plan, or should it just be literally baby steps?
I think it depends how much time you've got to commit to it as well, and also where you're starting from. So,
you can have goalposts, can't you? But I think even in any sort of PR, any marketing, 5-year plans, just nothing. It's nothing in life anymore either. But I just think trying to do a 5-year plan, yes, you can have goals that you're trying to reach, but we're not gone are the days when clients ask for, so what's going to be our, no, it's a 3-month or 6-month strategy, that's it.
Well, I got asked to do a 5-year cash flow the other day. I was like, no, there's absolutely no point. I've got no idea how much a pound will be worth in 5 years' time. So I'm just going to make it look great. So, right, we're going to wrap this up in a minute. Is there any advice that you can give to anyone, whether that's a young bartender joining a bar, whether that's someone, a seasoned pro who is thinking about going into consultancy? Is there any advice, maybe top 1 tip that you can give to any of those people who are looking to just develop their own, whether that's their own personal brand or their own brand of gin or their own bar or anything like that?
I'd say find what you're passionate in and then be consistent with that. I think that's...
I'd say integrity.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah,
your
big
integrity no matter what happens, and you'll get thrown so many curveballs all along the way. Whatever you do, stand by your beliefs and what you believe in, and keep the integrity. That's key.
I think make sure you know who your audience is, and always keep them in mind when you're doing anything. As I said, if you're a bartender and you want to engage with other bartenders, build your bartender network. Don't just, be like, this is my cocktail recipe, because if there are other bartenders, they probably know how to make a cocktail.
Yeah.
Like, think about who
And the
you're
potential to
trying
shit
talk
on
to.
that recipe also is very high.
Yeah, it's got 5 minutes too much of that.
Yeah, it's a very geeky world out there sometimes, which is why I never get involved in it.
I think
Anything else?
remaining authentic
Yeah.
as well is key.
Cool. Guys, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege. So Alex Irvin, Alex Chapman, I almost got you the wrong way around. Emma Stokes, Sarah Mackay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We got some questions as well. Anyone want to ask any questions? Or are we all done, ready for martinis?
Martinis.
Yeah.
No, not you. You don't get to ask questions. If no one's got any questions, we're pretty much done. Oh, that was such a... I do have a question, but I'm too scared to ask it. No? Okay. Yeah, cool.
part of a big restaurant group a while back. I can say Gordon House Group, and
Quite a big one.
they developed lots of different concepts, and often there'd be a concept that would be developed by the different people in the team that you'd have to then challenge because you just knew it wasn't right, the direction for it wasn't right, or you knew the market wasn't right, or the location wasn't right. And it's really tricky to have to then go up against that and kind of fight against it.
What, Ramsay yelling at you? Gordon Ramsay yelling at you in the offices.
But he always listened, and I think, like I say, if you've got conviction in it, and like say authenticity, and you've got reasoning behind it, I think I'd never be scared to fight back. I'm quite well known for it, and I stand by it every time. So
I think it's also important that brands constantly evolve. You know, like what we set out to do 14 years ago is not completely different, but it's very different now than what it was back then, because it's just, times change, people change. Some of the bartenders who are working here were only 11 when we first opened. I'm like,
oh, for goodness sake.
I know, right? Yeah. So,
That makes me feel old.
anyone else? Yeah.
Put their address on their Instagram. Honestly.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like, there's so many, and you go on, you're like, I have no idea where you are, so. Go.
No? You sure, Bells? No? All right.
depends on your audience, I think.
Yeah, we're going to say it's your audience. So I think if you are, I think it's better to do like one thing well, like instead of trying to spread yourself across loads of channels, and you don't, if you've got like all the multiple resources and you're able to dedicate loads of time to all the channels, great. But if you haven't, it's better to just really grow and develop one. But likewise, though, also look at who your audience is, because if you're targeting a younger demographic, then obviously TikTok is going to be the better thing for now. But if it's not, and you're going for millennials, then you might want to stick with Instagram. So I think it's kind of looking at who your audience is when you choose what your channel is.
Not being scared as well, I think, when new platforms do come out,
Yeah.
to kind of explore them, because it takes a while as well when new platforms do come out for them to kind of establish like who it is that's engaging with them. It's kind of a constantly changing, evolving thing. So I think it's something that can be quite fluid as well in terms of what you work on.
I work with restaurants and bars, but also individuals. So say Twitter is great if you're an individual and you've got time, and it's very much kind of conversational. So I work with a lot of chefs, and they love Twitter, and they talk to each other and scream at each other and do everything on Twitter. Whereas with actual restaurants and bars, I'm much more like Instagram, and then if they're younger to TikTok. So I think it does depend on what you're representing.
I guess
Person or product.
being an early adopter helps though, because that's I think why I've got a larger following on Instagram than many, because I was there at the start, and then TikTok came along and I was like, I just can't. Enough. But I think there is an opportunity to be had on TikTok for doing it well, but you also have to be really careful because it is a younger demographic. So we are talking about alcohol, so it will grow to be a mature audience as time goes on. As the Instagram audience grew up with us all, it will happen with TikTok. But I think there's you have to be really careful with it at the moment in the way that you interact with it, given the younger audience that's on there.
It depends on your brand if it's visual, so if it's cocktails and food and very visual aspects, and obviously things like TikTok and Instagram work really well. Or if it's not, if it's a bit more about culture behind it, then obviously things like Twitter still work really well. So like I say, it completely depends on the product.
Cool.
For the bartenders, you were saying about how bartenders, should they be encouraged, should they be expected to post about places they work? When they're coming up in their career, and let's say they have done that, they endorse the place they work, they can become intrinsically linked with it. So if and when they decide to move, and you're talking about building their own personal brand and their own personal sort of message, how do they maintain that authenticity if they've gone from somewhere where they are linked with it to then moving somewhere else? How can you maintain that brand, personal brand authenticity, when you've completely switched messages but you still are trying to engage the same audience?
It comes from the DNA of it. For this, it's not so much bartenders that I'm familiar with, it's chefs. So if you look at any of the great chefs, the Tom Sellers and the likes of them, they all started with Tom Aitken and Lee Westcott, but whereas now they've developed into their own brands. But even if you look at all their social media, the the visual aspect of it is still very similar. So it's about having, again, we talked about this with photography, it's about having your own visual identity, whoever you're representing, rather than having their visual identity. So when you're doing photography and things for the bar, I would suggest that they do their own, or at least they do their own style, and have that done on the side, so that then it's consistent throughout wherever they go, because then they're recognised for that.
I think as well you need to think about your own personal brand,
Yeah.
not the brand of the place you're working. So, and it does tie into that as well, but you know, you need to be thinking about things in a bigger sense than just your job. And I know, you know, bartenders work long hours and you're time poor, right? You don't have as much time, but you know, if you're going out, you should be talking about other things in the bigger sense of yourself. Also, don't be afraid to talk about you as a person. You might like going to the theatre, put that on Instagram. It's great. It makes you into an actual physical human being rather than just someone that churns out cocktails. It's all about working out who your brand is.
And who you
sharing
are,
that,
and then being strong about that, and then likewise, having your own style, or however you do that. Or it might be that you might be working in a bar, but you might have a passion for whiskey, for example. So you might, when you're still posting from your bar and about your bar, but you might choose to focus on certain things, and so it's kind of like, so you become
I was going to say it's finding
what you're passionate,
what you're personally passionate about, because that's translatable across different venues. And I think that's where you can kind of maintain that consistency, even if you're going to different places.
It'll also come with experience. I think, like I say, when you're starting out and you're doing things, and you know, if you've been to we worked at the world's best bar, and then you work on another one and another one. I think after a while it'll become about them rather than the bars they've worked in. I think it is just experience.
I think also there shouldn't be a worry about moving from one place to the next, because everyone understands. You know, people want to develop their careers.
Yeah, that's just every industry. Like, people go, you can't develop, like, you know, people develop or learn by going to different places, and like, that's just.
It's part of the brilliant part of this industry, though, isn't it? As well, you learn from each other, and you know, it's a really kind of collegiate, collaborative environment. So moving around shouldn't be why are they over there now?
Don't get me wrong, if I've got a CV where someone's had a month here, a month there,
Oh,
there,
gosh.
Let's say.
True. 6 months different.
Anything else? Or are we all done? God. Come on, Ed.
You're desperate for a martini. Okay. I'm joking.
I think probably your don't forget your immediate local vicinity, because ultimately that's going to be your trade.
That's your way, and we're going to make your bread and butter money from. That's like your local audience. Is
And
your
it can be done really cost effectively.
Yeah.
It is literally like pounding pavements, meeting people, saying hello,
making forging relationships.
Yeah.
And then the other from there as well on a budget would be, and again, you know, obviously having lovely imagery helps, but I would say social media is, I mean, it's a time resource, but it is something that could be done internally.
And it's kind of, that is like your shop window then for your bar, in terms of what you're offering and kind of what entices people in.
I'd also say working with some of the brands, again, like say if you've not much of a budget, I'm thinking working with Bacardis of the world, like they go around talking to everybody all the time about other people's bars, so it's essentially free marketing. So getting in with all those guys, getting them in the bar, trying it, working with the products, then it'll be a natural progression that they'll start talking about it. So it's free PR.
And likewise, all those big brands tend to have a PR agency, and the PR agency generally likes to have somewhere to take journalists, or they like to have a cocktail to talk about. So trying to actively encourage, or when you're having those conversations, being like, we'd be happy to do this, or whatever it might be. That will help, and that would
And they're really keen to kind of help, especially with the bar and this kind of new offering. They're really keen to help nurture that. So I think although there's quite a lot of aspects of launching a new brand or a new venue that you can do really cost effectively. You don't have to spend massive budgets on.
And I would say if you had limited budgets, one of the best things to spend some of the money on, and there are cost-effective ways to do it, but is to get some strong imagery, because a picture makes 1,000 words, and whether you use that for your social media, whether you do then get some journalist that comes along and happens to fall upon you and wants to write about it, they'll need a really good image. So even just having a couple of good images of your venue will just be worth it, so worth it. So I think that's, if you had that little pot of money, that's what's worth spending the money on.
And photographers love to work for a bit of contra.
You can use stock.
Yeah,
exactly. So
I think that's it. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you very much, panel. Really enjoyed that. Right, should we get a martini?
Yes.
There we go.